And Highway, a brilliant crossback.
100 days that shook the top.
I was dying to play my 5th European Cup final for Liverpool Football Club, and it turned out to be such a tragedy and sickening, really.
I think the reason that disaster happens, and it's simple, it's because of the inadequacies of the authorities.
Peter Robinson had told UEFA prior to the final that the segregation wasn't good enough. The ground wasn't up to standard, but he didn't listen. You know, and basically, I feel so sorry for the families of the Italians who lost their lives, but it was something that would have been avoided if UEFA had to listen to Peter Robinson.
Because the club was nowhere at fault, neither were Juventus. I often reflect and say there was no inquiry really. I want to know who was to blame for choosing that inept stadium for two massive clubs playing a European Cup final. And it was dilapidated, yeah, but surely, you know, Barcelona was available, the Bernabeu, it could be anywhere really, but not a run-down athletic stadium.
Arsenal had been there a few years before, and Arsenal fans on the grapevine, we knew it was a dump. We knew Arsenal fans had said, oh, it's crumbling. The actual ground is crumbling. So everybody knew, even when we got our tickets at Anfield, we saw the X section crossed out. We said, what's that for? He said, yeah. And then the rumour went round, Juventus have got half our end. That was the first rumour. And as it transpired, it was like Juventus had a third of the end, but it wasn't Juventus who had it. It was neutrals, but everyone knew Brussels, massive Italian community, so everyone knew the neutrals from Brussels who were going to get the tickets were going to be Juventus fans.
We had 11,000 tickets. That's the thing that still rankles. Joe Fagan should have been sent off, just as Bob Paisley did, with a winning climax, because we were going to do our utmost to send him off the way Bob Paisley was given at that time, and it wasn't to be. And it still feels hurt that somebody underneath it all was responsible for that.
You know, when we first got our tickets, I remember vividly getting my ticket, and I've still got it at home, and it's got XYZ, and it's got, I think it's the X section, felt tip penned out, and this ticket is still intact. It's still a complete ticket.
It was one of them sort of days where, you know, when you get an uneasy feeling outside the ground that something's not right, and it's the first time ever that I've been to a match and got that feeling. Again, it was a nice hot sunny day, and I'd gone for a couple of days and stayed at a hotel, and we'd left the hotel, we got to the ground, it was nice and hot and sunny, got off the coach, just walking around England, we were just laying on the grass, and all of a sudden there was only, you sort of got the impression that the things, can't describe the feeling, it was like you got a shiver down your spine, that basically things weren't right that day.
We were disgusted at the organisation, even before anything ever happened on the terrace. We were saying to people, you know, what's going on, where's the queue, you know, and it was just literally every person for themselves, you know. You were literally having to go in, even if you had a ticket, and as you got in, you were truncheoned for no apparent reason.
I felt very uneasy sitting outside the ground, as did my mates, and basically we decided that for safety we were going to the ground, and we weren't in the main end of Liverpool supporters, we were on the side, and to our horror, when we get into the ground, we expected to be able to relax in the ground because, you know, we'd be amongst Liverpool supporters, and to our horror, when we got in there, we got our tickets from Liverpool, got on an official trip with the Development Association, and we were actually surrounded by Juventus supporters, which made us even more uneasy.
I mean, everyone, I think, was wound up so much by the attitude of the police, you know. I mean, the lads with me, you know, he got in and he had a gun pulled on by one of the police and he had a ticket, but because he ducked away from being hit on the head with a truncheon, wait there, he's bought a ticket for the match, he's going to a match, and he, for his troubles, as he goes into the game, he's getting a truncheon, you know, over the head, you know. So I think he objected to that, and someone, one of the police pulled. I think they were totally inexperienced. They'd had this image of English hooligans. They didn't know how to deal with the crowd, and the presumption was everybody from England was a hooligan.
I took my camera with me telephoto lens. I just intended to take some shots, and I had it round my neck. And I just remember panning round the ground. There's a kids' football match going on before kick-off is pre-match entertainment, and there was a very, very hostile atmosphere in there. There seemed to be more Juventus fans in the ground than Liverpool supporters. And after this kids' football match had finished, I was sitting down and just panning round the ground, and I just happened to have my telephoto lens focused on the area where the wall collapsed, and I didn't know what it was at the time, and all of a sudden I just seen this puff of dust up, and I turned to my mate and said, "Did you see that then?" He said, "What?" I said, "There's something like puff of dust just went up over there, don't know what it is."
I was in a section on the opposite section to the curve that collapsed, where the wall collapsed, So I wasn't particularly an eyewitness to what started it, but it just seemed to be like minor scuffles and minor skirmishes. You'd seen it 100 times before, in every ground, in every country. But why the police couldn't... Tell you what, 20 Liverpool police from the Anfield Road would have sorted that out in 30 seconds. And I know that for a fact.
All we kept getting told is from the Italians was at the end of the game. That's all you're getting told is people walking past and everything, and it was really scary.
There was rumours went round, even when the match was getting played. It was surreal because, even after the wall collapsed, there were still horses charging around the perimeter of the pitch, and Juventus fans came from the other end. And when you always see footage of this Heysel thing, you always see the Juventus fans, and that was the other end, with poles and various objects. And they tried to charge up towards the Liverpool fans. God only knows if they'd have been successful in getting to the Liverpool end, because there probably would have been more fatalities. But just remember thinking, what at the European Cup final like this is a joke. Even though we didn't know anyone had died, we just thought this is a shambles.
Joe Fagan had gone to address the fans, and they suggested that I done it some an hour. It seemed an hour later I was the one that is now going to be bodyguarded, spat on and everything, because I had to walk up to the tannoy, which was up the far end where the Italians were, and it wasn't the best of passages to make your way through, particularly when you've got a Liverpool tracksuit, and I just had the gear on, ready to go out and play. So it was a difficult time. I remember the UEFA handing me a statement, as you might do, to say, read this. And I took one look, I went, no, it doesn't ring that. I'm not having that. I'm going to say what I feel from the heart. So I did do. I screwed it up and threw it on the floor. The official statement that he wanted me to read, and I wouldn't do it. So I just appealed to our fans.
I think there was a lacklustre affair for the players because they knew people were dead, but I think most fans were unaware that people had died, I mean, we weren't aware that people had died until we got back to Ostend and we got back on the train. And then, there's been rumours that 5 people had been hurt or 10 people had been hurt. And then when we got off at Ostend, everywhere was shut. The whole of the town was shut, and we were met by police, who confiscated flags or whatever. And I always remember the lad with me, who was with me, he just said, what are you doing that for? Because he didn't know either, no one knew. It was only when we got back to the hotel that people told us what had happened,
Yeah, it was always a mismatch. I think we had a definitely penalty when Ronnie Whelan got brought down, and they scored a penalty which was outside the box, but that's all irrelevant to really what's happened on there. And we played a game really, and you ask people who played in the game now, even speak to Juventus players who played in that game, they weren't really, it wasn't like a cup final, it was just a game, so let's get it over with and let's just see that your family's okay and everyone else is okay.
I think on reflection, I know they said we have to play. I think it would have been better to call the game off. Even if you null and void the winners, I don't care. I think it would have been a better decision to have called that game completely off.
I wish it had never happened, and all you can say is you feel so sorry for the people who lost their lives and their families that they left behind.
We should never forget these things. We've got to learn from them and make sure they don't happen again.